Hey, what's up? PizzaLovingNerd here. I love GNOME, and I love that every application developed by GNOME has a similar design, and I love the integration across GNOME apps, causing it to have a nifty ecosystem in the Linux world. I'd even go as far to say that GNOME's design consistency is better than both Windows and Mac OS. However, there's one app that sticks out like a sore thumb in the GNOME ecosystem, and that app is Rhythmbox. Let's talk about that. Now, before I complain about Rhythmbox, let's first get out of the way that there are other GNOME apps that do not fit with GNOME's human design interface guidelines. The biggest app other than Rhythmbox I can think of that doesn't follow GNOME's user interface guidelines is Evolution. But Evolution feels like it's geared more towards power users, and it has a very good alternative to it with LBRY for those who do want something that fits GNOME's human design guidelines. And Evolution also isn't pre-installed with Linux distros very often. But for some reason, a lot of Linux distros, including Ubuntu and Fedora, pre-install Rhythmbox as the default media player, which means that to me it's considered a core GNOME app since many distros ship it out of the box with their GNOME desktop versions. And to me, Rhythmbox is by far one of the worst core GNOME apps. Now, let's go over some things I like about Rhythmbox. And there are quite a few redeeming qualities of Rhythmbox. One is its support for plugins allows you to customize how the music player works. And if there's something that you want to add to the music player, instead of needing to fork the music player and edit the code of the application to add the feature, you can just write a plugin for it, and so it's real easy to add features you'd want. I also really like its podcast feature. For example, if you want to add a podcast, you can just click on the search button and you can search from the podcast library in order to basically add any podcast you want. Whereas with something like GNOME Podcasts, which is an app designed specifically for podcasts, you still have to get the podcast URL feed and put it in manually, and you can't just search for podcasts. And finally, I think Rhythmbox is one of the best default icons for any GNOME app. But that's about all the praise I have for Rhythmbox. My biggest issue with Rhythmbox is the design. The design of Rhythmbox is very similar to older versions of iTunes. It shows you a giant list of all your songs, and then you find your song or album you want to listen to, and click on it, and you can click this browse button and it will show you another row on the top with your albums and artists, which I always keep on because it's kind of overwhelming to just have all my songs in one list. This design might have worked well 10 years ago, but it feels very dated in 2021. Another thing is that I don't like how its queue system works. If I start an album, it will autoplay, the next songs on the album, right? But if you go to the queue tab, it doesn't show any songs, unless you right-click a song and add it as the next song to play. I really don't like how its queue system works, it's very confusing. But ultimately, the biggest issue with the design is the fact that everything on my GNOME desktop has a consistent design because they all follow GNOME's human design guidelines, except for Rhythmbox. Rhythmbox just took GNOME's human interface guidelines and they went, yeah, no. So we're going to go through GNOME's human interface guidelines and see what kind of stuff Rhythmbox ignores. Let's first start with GNOME's design principles. Now, Rhythmbox does follow most of GNOME's design principles, but there is one key one that it doesn't follow, and that key design principle is use progressive disclosure to show controls when they are needed. And basically what that means is if you're only going to use a button in the application once, then maybe hide that button away in a hamburger menu. Rhythmbox barely does this. For example, Rhythmbox has a small bar right here that gives you an edit, browse, view all, and import button. And the edit button just opens a menu, and all of the options in this menu could be either moved to a right-click menu when you right-click a song, or just move to the hamburger menu. There's a browse button, which just toggles the extra row showing your artists and albums, which is a very unnecessary button to me because I'm just always going to leave this on. And again, this could go into the hamburger menu because if you want to toggle between them, just go to the hamburger menu and hit a checkbox to add those two rows. Then there's the view all button. Now, this basically, if you select an artist and select a random album, this basically resets to go back to showing all artists and all albums. The issue is I don't need a dedicated button for this. I'm smart enough to just click all albums and then click all artists. So just having a dedicated button is very useless when I could do the same thing with 2 clicks. And finally, there's an import button. Now, this is another thing that should be in the hamburger menu, because once you add in your music folder to Rhythmbox, it automatically updates when you add new things to your music folder, which means that I'm only going to use this button once. So, again, for it to always be showing at all times, this should just be in a hamburger menu somewhere. This bar also has a search bar on the right, which is pretty useful, and I already do use this feature a lot, but this could be moved to a header bar. Wait a second, Rhythmbox doesn't have a header bar. Why? The common GNOME app usually uses a header bar with some sort of key options such as a view switcher, search bar, hamburger menu, among other things. And then the content inside the window is usually under the header bar. I can think of many GNOME apps that do this, and pretty much all of them I can think of except Rhythmbox do this, including, but not limited to, GNOME Files, GNOME Software, and GNOME Settings. Even Rhythmbox does this a little bit. The media controls in the hamburger menu are at the top of the program, but for some reason, Rhythmbox developers did not put these controls inside the Windows header bar, which means we have a window title bar above it, which seems like a very unnecessary waste of monitor space to me. And this just feels off to me, because this is something that almost every other GNOME app does, and so it just feels like a foreign application to my GNOME desktop. Luckily, this is Linux, so there will be alternatives to it. Not really. All the alternatives right now I can't really use. GNOME has two other music players you can use as alternatives to Rhythmbox if you're like me and you don't like it. It has Lollipop and GNOME Music. Lollipop Music Player is very good, but I can't use it right now because of a bug where the system freezes whenever a song plays for me for about 10 seconds, and Last.fm support is broken right now. When it works properly, it is probably one of the better options for GNOME users looking for a good music player. It has a great design, it has every feature you would want, it's beautiful, it's adaptive, and it works great on phones and small screens because it's adaptive. Now, if you aren't into Lollipop, or you're having the same issue I'm having, there's also GNOME Music. This is a very basic music player, but I like its design a lot for desktop computers, although it's not adaptive so it won't work on phones. It could use some extra features like maybe Last.fm support without GNOME Online accounts, because right now you have to use GNOME Online accounts and Fedora doesn't package Last.fm on GNOME Online accounts. And it could also use lyrics, an equalizer, and a volume changer so that you don't have to use GNOME settings to change the volume. But if you want to just listen to music and you don't care about any other features, you just want a really basic music player that just plays music, GNOME Music is a good option for this. I'm just not using it because I want Last.fm support. So, how could Rhythmbox get better? 1. Make some design changes. Put the top bar with your media controls inside the Windows header bar. Also, I would kind of like a grid view for all my albums. Maybe have a mode where it shows all of your album artwork in a grid view, and then when you click on the album, it will show all of your songs on the bottom, and then you could play a song like that. Lastly, fix your queue system a little bit, because like I said earlier, the queue system is really confusing because playing an album doesn't put all of the next songs in the queue, but right-clicking a song and setting it to play next does. So that is a little bit confusing. And yeah, that's the video. Thanks to patrons, Mitchell Vantino, Sam Covett, Jonathan Reynolds, and 2 new patrons, Pete Bistray, sorry I'm butchering your name, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry, and Marius Gripsgard from UbiPorts. Keep doing great work on Ubuntu Touch. The support really helps. I just got a green screen, and I don't have good lighting for the green screen, so when I'm editing, I have to use like 2 different chroma key effects with 2 different shades of green in order to make it work properly. So I could stop doing that if I get more patrons so I could get proper lighting for my setup. Anyways, that's the video. Have a good one.